Awesome. Kia ora, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Busts of Knowledge. I think this is episode number 31. Whoa, crazy. Who would have thought that? Hey, Tane, how's it going?
Yeah, good, thank you. How about you?
Good, good, good. Thank you. So, Tane, what have you filled in your basket of knowledge this week?
So this week I've started one of my practicums and I've been working with Waka Otago, which helps younger students with physical disabilities just get into physical activity. And so this week I was helping with wheelchair rugby, and I think it was just eye-opening to see the things we take for granted, just the simple ability to be able to move and go out and go for a walk or do things that we are able to do because of the bodies we have. And I think sometimes we just take that so much for granted. We don't appreciate the things we're able to do just with our bodies in our day-to-day life. And so I think that's one thing I've taken away, is that sometimes you just have to reflect on the things that we don't actually reflect about.
Yeah, and that's pretty crazy. It's sometimes when you don't have something, when you lose something, that's when you appreciate it. But hopefully you don't have to lose that before you appreciate it, right? Hopefully you
Mm.
don't go, oh, I've lost the use of my limbs and I've got to appreciate my limbs. So it's pretty awesome that you have gained that perspective. What have I learned in this last week? Or this last time we've spoken? I've learned a lot. I guess one of the things that I have learned is one of my colleagues is leaving us soon. So it just takes a pause to reflect about the growth that happens when you join a team or a team member joins you. And it's actually, it links back to what you just said. As I'm reflecting they're leaving, I now realize that what I'm going to miss about them, um, and I should have appreciated that before when they were actually in the team. You don't appreciate somebody until it's too late, and that could be in all aspects of life. So I think I'm going to just riff off what you've just said, and appreciation is pretty important, and that's what I've learned to do, whether it's loss of a limb or losing somebody to a different organization or just whatever. Just that appreciation is key. Talking about appreciation, let's get into our podcast, because as always, Tanya and I can keep talking, but it's not about us. As always, to our listeners, we like to bring some people that we think are pretty awesome human beings for various reasons. And today we have a double whammy of awesomeness. So get ready for it. Welcome to our podcast, Sam and Grace.
Hello, it's nice to be here. So my name's Sam. I'm a sixth-year medical student based in Hawke's Bay at the moment. So my first year down to Dunedin was 2017. Did health sci first year, did 3 years down to Dunedin, then bounced around through Wellington for my fourth and fifth year, which we call ALM years, which we'll probably talk about a bit in depth later on. And then for your final year, you get to go a bit more rural again. So I've chosen to come to sunny Hawke's Bay. So that's a little bit about me. I'll hand it over to Grace.
Brilliant.
Kia ora. Yeah, kia ora. I'm Grace. Also a sixth year, lucky enough to be down in Otago, Christchurch on my elective for 6 weeks. I'm about 3 weeks deep in that. So really enjoying the experience of being here. Very similar story to Sam, from the Taranaki originally, and then met Prajesh, and then the rest of there is history. He sent me down to Dunedin, did a year of house side down there, and then the 2 years of ELM. And then Sam and I both went to Wellington and did our ALM years there. And then I also chose to head off to Hawke's Bay and get a bit more rural experience and get a bit closer to some waves and sun and good times, really.
Oh, brilliant. Sunshine from Taranaki to sunshine in the Hawke's Bay, right? It's got to be in the DNA. For our listeners that are wondering why we have two awesome people today, is because Grace and Sam are actually brother and sister, which is pretty cool, and they're actually twins, which is even more awesome. Thanks for sharing that, guys. But let's go right back to you both. So when I met you all those years ago, health sci was one of your dreams, and the other one it wasn't. So should we talk about that? So let's go with Grace first. When we met you at New Plymouth Girls all those years ago, why was health sci something that you wanted to do?
It's a good question. Funny, because when I think back to it, there was nothing that ever really pointed me in the direction of medicine. Mum and dad weren't medical, didn't really have any family members that were medical. And I guess I'd always done well at the sciences, and I'd always liked people. And I suppose when you do well at the sciences, people always say like, oh, you'd make a good doctor. And so I guess it was almost like people had said these things, and I was like, oh, well, may as well give it a shot. and thought, why not just try my hand at house sci. I always enjoyed medicine and like looking after people and from a young age, so thought it kind of fit in.
It's pretty crazy how, how the cliche is you like sciences, you should become a doctor. It's pretty crazy how it works for some people, it doesn't work for others. But it goes back to, at school, you have these sciences. Okay, you're good at sciences, you should either be an engineer or you should be a doctor. It's pretty funny, hey?
Yeah.
Sam, what about you? I met you at New Plymouth Boys at the same time, I guess,
yeah.
around the same time.
Yeah, I sort of had a bit of a different story. So I was probably less academically focused than Grace. I was much more into my sports. I wasn't anything to write home about academically. I passed level 2, 3 with merit. I think I got level 1 with excellence. But I was much more of a sport sort of focused thing. School was sort of more of a social activity than like anything else. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do out of high school. I think had like a group of about 10 mates, and 8 of them didn't want to go to uni. They were like real keen to pursue trades. And I was sort of like, I'd always enjoyed arguing and sort of going back and forth and things like that with people. And so I was like, maybe I want to do law. And I had a family friend's dad that was a lawyer. And so I went to a placement there and I was bored out of my tree. And so I thought, nah, I don't want to do law. And I remember I was getting really close to the university deadline of where you had to decide to go to. And I look around thinking about doing law and I was like, no, I don't want to do this. And Grace was like, I'm going to go to Otago. And then one of my other mates that did want to go to uni was like, I'm going to do Otago as well. And I was like, yeah, I heard some pretty good things about Otago. And I thought about, like sports, sort of medicine and physio, like watching All Blacks and, lots of other New Zealand sports teams. You always see the medics and, physios and stuff, and they get a pretty cool, traveling and, real intense sports stuff. And so that was sort of the initial dream, to head down there, and sort of what took me down to Dunedin. And then I think one of the good things about house sci, which probably people don't talk about so much, is the variation of what you can do coming out of it. And I think a lot of people go down there as either it's, medicine or nothing. But there's a huge amount of branches that you can take aside from that. And so that was sort of what drew me to it, is a very general and broad course that can link you into a lot of other degrees, whether it's, medicine, physio, pharmacy, dentistry, or literally pretty much any other Bachelor of Science, sports science, lots of things. It's almost infinite, the possibilities you come out of first year house sci. So that was probably what initially drew me down there, and then the culture of Dunedin as well.
Yeah, awesome. What a crazy different story. One of you was, all right, cool, I like my sciences, this is what I'm going to do. And you were like, I like arguing. You went to work for a lawyer and decided, actually, no, this is not my jam. And that's okay. And I think that's a cool benefit there, because you actually went and tried it out. And I think a lot of people out there don't go and try before they buy, if that makes sense. I want to be XYZ, but actually, what does XYZ actually do? And the fact that you did, and some of you might love that, and some of you might not like that. So that's awesome that you did that. Because imagine finishing up your program and then going into Korea and going, oh man, this is not what I thought it was going to be. I watch Suits, and this is definitely not Suits. So that's awesome that you did that. Yeah, the other thing that I'm also going to mention is that both of you identify as Maori, and we've spoken about Waiora as well a few times on this podcast. So Grace and Sam, I guess, did how influential, or how did Waiora work into your thinking of going forward? I guess because they gave you exposure to different areas in the health sector. I'm guessing, yeah.
I don't even remember how I initially got onto Waiora. They were just a part of my high school kind of life from probably about year 11. I think they picked me up. And they were amazing. I can't talk highly enough about them. They come to school and they talk to you about options that you have in your career from year 11. And even though there's no rush to know what you want to do, it's so awesome to have the opportunity to hear about what's out there. I feel like as a year 11, 12, and even going into year 13, I feel like, like you were saying, it's either like medicine, engineering, and like touching on with Sam, going into house sci, you can do like a huge array of different careers out of house sci. And I suppose they're really important for shedding knowledge on some different kind of practices that you can do out of school. and they were just awesome at getting you out, getting you like getting you involved in culture and getting you all together as Māori students at New Plymouth Girls, and kind of creating a bit of unity between everyone and a bit of just education on how to go forward with careers and like how they can help you. So that was awesome.
Yeah. What about you, Sam? Did you get involved with them, or were you not as involved?
Yeah, so I was involved with them as well. I'm not sure what year I got involved. I think I might have been year 12. I think it was a year after Grace. I'm not sure for any reason why, but
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing for me was like coming out of high school, like it's not that off. Like, you know, I had a part-time job and I worked in like a fruit and vegetable store, and I worked at Macca's, and I worked in a couple other places, like newspaper runs and stuff. But you don't really get that much job experience of other things. And so I think the biggest thing for me was like they go and take you out of class, and you go and do an hour just like walking through ED, and you just see like what an ED actually runs like, and then you go and you talk to one of the ED doctors would come and talk to you, and then you go to a GP clinic, or you go to a pharmacy, or you go to a physio, and you actually see how stuff works. And I think that's one of the things that for high school students is really daunting, is like you're asked to sort of almost bottleneck yourself into a career when you're 18 years old and you haven't really experienced so much of these careers. And so I think that's probably the biggest thing that they helped me with, was like, this is what it's actually like to do this job, and this is what it's like to get to that point, and how long it will take. And, you know, like just things like work-life balance, like, you know, like no one sort of thinks when you're 18, like, I do this, will I still be able to play sport? Will I still be able to do this and have a family and do this? And so I think, yeah, that was probably the biggest thing. It's just like that insight into what different careers look like, and the time it would take you to get there, and where you'd have to be based to do them. And so, like, I guess like the practical elements of getting into the workforce is probably what they helped me the most with.
Yeah, and I guess Tana, you had the same experience as well, and you decided, okay, cool, I'll give it a crack, and then this wasn't your jam, and that's okay. And I think that's important to go, right, cool. Just because you try something doesn't mean you've got to do it, right, Tana?
Yeah, definitely. I tried physio and realized there was a lot more to physio than sports physio, because I feel like a lot of people think it's just sports physio, but there's such a huge variety of physio. But I also found that I was really interested in rehab, and I didn't know that until I went in. So even though it's not necessarily what I've gone into now, I was still able to take something away from that opportunity.
Yeah, awesome. Grace, I want to touch on something else that you mentioned, the unity as Māori students at New Plymouth Guilds, because I guess, you know, Waiora introduced you to the health sector, but also the other thing is to identify the fact that you're Māori and the fact that you represent your family in a whole different way. What is that like for the two of you? I guess I'm trying to be spoken about you before, so we'll go with Grace and Sam, then we'll come back to you later.
It's kind of like my journey with Māori has kind of been a bit disconnected, like stemming from, I suppose, from the start. Like my grandmother was adopted, and so we kind of I feel like we lost a lot of kind of connection to our, like the whenua and the iwi and the marae, and my mum has put a lot of time into trying to reconnect that and get us back involved with our iwi, which has been awesome. And so I feel like it was a little bit of a disconnect for us along the lines. And then living in Europe for 5 years was also quite challenging, you know, because that was the intermediate years where I feel like you learn a lot about like culture and just basic te reo. And so I feel like we also missed out on a lot of that. So it's, you know, I feel like at times there's been a bit of an imposter syndrome, but like I'm saying with Waiora and also at the University of Otago, like I can't say enough about how amazing they've been at including us in all the marae and the hui, and just like including and making that real unity feel and working as a team, and like especially in house side when it's so competitive and every day's a drag, you know, they're always there for you and they pull everyone together, and it's just like insane the amount of connection that you feel to people that you've never met before, just because they're able to bring you together and really like gel everything and just hold your hand throughout that process, I guess.
Which is important. Connection is important, you know. Sam, what about you?
Yeah, so I was very similar. Obviously being in the same barn, I was great. It's like very disconnected initially anyway. And I think the biggest change for me was when we went down to Otago Uni, and like we started earlier as Māori students, or we didn't start earlier, but we engaged with the university earlier as Māori students. We all think we had just a big Kai, I think it was at the start. I think is what we had first, and we all just got together. And they all just like, it was just like a real nice like icebreaker, I guess, essentially. And you just got to meet people, and you didn't feel like you were completely isolated on day one. And that just sort of grew all the way through. And especially through health science, like you go through some real tough times, and it almost feels like you're a team against the rest. And I feel like a lot of Pākehā students or other ethnicities that don't have that sort of whānau and sort of team approach almost feel really isolated, and it's them against the world. Whereas with us, it was never, you had a team around you, and it's like, I'll help you, you help me. Whereas a lot of other students, I felt they sort of felt they couldn't help others for fear that they would beat them. Yeah. And we sort of took the approach that's like, we either all make it or we don't, kind of thing. And so that was probably what the biggest thing for me, and like that sense of like community and unity and whānau. And there's like that initial whakawhanaungatanga that you do with everyone. And you just have friends in like other halls, and like you have a wider support network than your average Joe that goes down to Otago Uni.
Yeah, and I guess that extends to any tertiary that young Māori, actually any young person goes to. When you leave home, that isolation is pretty real. I think a lot of, and I'm seeing that at the moment where lots of young people contact me because they're homesick and they feel isolated. But I guess identifying as Māori or Pacifica when you have those support groups, but also tapping into them. You could identify as Māori or Pacifica or whatever your ethnicity, but not tap into any group, and you still feel isolated. So the fact that you both tapped in, and all three of you tapped in, is pretty important. Because there's things that are always there, but if you don't utilize them, then it's a wasted resource. Let's talk about health. Let's talk about first year university. We won't talk about health, we'll talk about first year university. So you leave Taranaki, you come down to a place that is not as, the beaches are not as warm. And what is that like for you both, mentally, physically, and emotionally, I guess? We'll start with Sam this time. We'll go to Grace.
So I guess to start off with, it was quite funny. So Grace was on a piece of paper very good. Grace was a prefect. She was a New Zealand volleyball team. She had level 2, 3, and 1 with excellence. So she applied for like the top hall, arana, or top sort of quotation marks. It's all subjective. But and I applied for arana as well, but I didn't make it, and I got Cumberland. And I think behind the scenes they didn't want to split us up. So Grace got chucked in Cumberland as well. And looking back on it, I'm very glad that I went to Cumberland. I think it was the perfect call for me. But I don't think Grace was as stoked. And so that kind of threw Grace off from the start, I think. I think it really helped us in the end, because I think being together and like just having a mate down there, because we didn't have any other people from New Plymouth that went down to Cumby. And so like from day one, and just having like whānau there, and like, so Grace was literally almost the room above me, a couple of doors down. And so you'd see each other like every day. You sort of, same sort of sense of like, that teammate, to go through just like that change, I guess. Like, even though, you get all your food cooked for you, and like a lot of it's like spoon fed for you when you go through halls, but like just the change of like, no one's going to be like, you should do this, or you need to do that, or you do need to wake up at 6:30 to get to your 8 a.m. lecture on time, or you do need to wake up and do that extra half hour of chemistry because chemistry is your worst subject, or there's just that change in the sense of your own responsibility and sort of your journey at this point, and no one's going to push you to do it, is the biggest change. And having someone there to manage that with you and to motivate you and to be like, that does suck, and it is really hard, but we're doing it together, or is probably what was the most supportive in the sense of having Grace down there with me.
So it's like living at home, but not living at home, right? You're living at home, but you have a bit of separation,
And I think being a twin as well, it's sort of like a different connection to what you have with, I obviously don't know, I don't have any other siblings, but me and Grace have always been very close. And I think, having Grace go through the same thing at the same time is just makes it a lot easier than, I'd say, a lot of only children or individuals go through.
Yeah, and I guess none of us actually know. You don't know what a non-twin goes through, and non-twins don't know what twins go through. So it's a pretty unique space to be in, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
What about yourself, Grace? What is your first year journey like?
Oh, that's a can of worms.
We'll have a can of worms on a Sunday morning.
My goodness me, yeah, first year was definitely a huge change of scenery from me. I guess, I went from being like a great high school student, like I don't know, it was just girls high. It was a perfect balance of me. I was training, I was playing for New Zealand in sport, I was getting excellences, I was mucking about. I feel like I'd kind of hacked the system a little bit at high school, found a little bit of a loophole and jumped through it quite a few times. And I guess I went to uni and I wasn't really prepared for what it was going to throw at me. I kind of thought going there that I'd figured out how to study, I'd figured out how to run my life, and I definitely had not. Hindsight's always 2020. And yeah, I first week down there was amazing. Week meeting all these new people, felt like I was just progressing, from my high school self to uni self, and then a couple of weeks in, I feel like the wheels fell off a little bit. You kind of realize in those first 3-4 weeks at uni that you're at uni now. You're on your own, and the study's quite different. I found it very different to high school sort of learning. And I'd made the decision then that I wasn't going to play sport that year because I was focusing on getting into med, and that was my dream. And that was probably one of the biggest mistakes I'd made looking back on it. Balances everything in life. Even now, it's so important. If you have a big test tomorrow, it's important to wake up, exercise, do what's important to you. If you're meditating, if you're writing or drawing, like getting that balance in. So yeah, that was a big mistake on looking back on things. Kind of left that physical element of my life, which was huge when I was at high school, behind. And I think that contributed to a few of the mental struggles that I went through in that first year. But yeah, definitely having, just touching on what we were saying earlier, Prajesh, about support, just because you're Māori at university, there's so many other groups that I went to support, as if you're a Pākehā student, that you can access as well. My hall at Cumbie, I cannot fault them. They were amazing. They, from the receptionist right through to the head of hall, they would check in with you if you weren't feeling too flash. Even the kitchen staff, they'd look out for you. How are you going today? And there's just so many support networks. So anyone that's listening and they need support, there's always support about. You just need to reach out and kind of make that connection, I feel.
Yeah, and I think you raised 2 points there that I'm going to touch on. Is like you said, when you go to university, week 1 or week 2 is pretty amazing, because that's not university. That's basically a socializing. Everyone has a great time, and then it's only around week 4 when things start going, actually, wait a minute, I can't party all the time. I'm not here to have a good time. It actually becomes real. And Tana, I'm guessing you must be seeing that right now in your role as week 4 rolls along. This is when the reality of university is starting to pop in for lots of young people.
Yeah, and I think that's the hard thing, is trying to make them aware of that, because they are, doing all these things. And I've had a few residents come to me and say, I feel like I can't say no. I feel like I have to be involved with everything. But on the same hand, they're compromising other things. And so a couple of the residents that have come to me and they play sports, I kind of use the analogy, it's like a training. So a lot of them are spending a lot more time doing their lectures and stuff like that. But I say, if you think about a training, you go to training and it's only an hour and a half or 2 hours. If you don't get through all the things you wanted to in that 2 hours, the coach doesn't say, okay, we're going to stay for another half an hour, because he's not going to compromise your time. And so if you link that back to study or anything you're doing, you shouldn't be compromising your time, because then you're missing out on doing other things. So I think it's finding that balance and sticking to your time that you've scheduled to do things.
Yeah, that's pretty hard though, as a young person. Like you said, Grace, you had a dream, and you're like, if I spend time playing sport, my dream is going to disappear because I'm spending time. And it's just that perception and that whole competitive nature that is put out there, unfortunately, in that first year. But again, you've got to reach out for that support there. So you both have this I guess a differential year. Grace is much harder for you for different levels, but you have the support. Sam, and whenever I saw you, were just like, oh, life is great. Every time I saw you, it was very different. But you both ground through it, and then you do the best that you can, and then you get offered a spot in med school. What is that like for the two of you, and I guess for your whānau?
So after going through first semester, all the papers in first semester I was good at. Like I really liked the first semester papers, especially physics and chem. And so I think those are probably the two. I think this is probably just my interpretation, but I think those are the two that really throw people off in house sci, and they're the most different to what you sort of comes naturally to people in terms of studying and what the interest is. Because I think a lot of people that want to do anything health-based, they enjoy the Hubs 191 paper, which is human body sciences. And biology in high school sort of prepares you relatively well for cells. And it's quite intuitive cells, like it makes sense. And chem and physics, they basically do NCA level 2 and 3 chemistry and physics in the first 2 weeks. And like after that, it's just brand new, like out of your depth content. And luckily, I think my brain sort of just works with numbers and it likes numbers. And so I think because I had that amount of time sort of spare because I didn't have to work on those papers as much, I got to spend more time with hubs and cells, and that was what sort of helped me a lot get through first semester. So when I got my grades back to first semester, I was really happy with them, and I didn't choose to pick up a fourth paper for second sem, which once again like buys you more time to focus on your 3 papers. And it's probably a challenge that a lot of students go through in the sense of, do you pick up that fourth paper and to split your time over 4 papers in the hope that one of those papers can replace one of your first 4 semester papers, or whether you bank on taking 3 and doing really well in those 3. So I went for the 3, and I did pretty well in those as well. And so I was feeling pretty good coming out of my final exams for health sci, and I was just waiting for results really. And after that, I think I was just like, I'm just glad to be going home and enjoy summer and catch up with some mates I hadn't seen in a while. And I think I was just sort of what will be kind of thing. Like you've done your best and you're just waiting. And I got the offer, and
Can I just go back one
I got
step?
an offer from Dent as well.
Can I just go back one step, Sam?
And I sort of hummed and hawed about which one I wanted to do.
That's right. Sounds good. Sam, can I ask you a question before you talk about that there? So right at the start, you said you when you think about health sciences, like physio and sports type stuff was the thing that you're going for. What made you switch to go, actually, maybe I should apply for medicine? Yeah.
I found hubs, so the human body sciences paper, like not thrilling, but like very interesting. And I think just the way that you can start to understand the human body is like fascinating. And I guess I just wanted that sort of, I guess deeper level is probably the wrong way to put it, but that, I guess deeper understanding of physiology and stuff that medicine brings with it, as opposed to the more practical component that physio probably has with it. And I think like, even now, like where you'll think about something, like how your body right now, we're all sitting here, is just like regulating all these incredible hormones, and it's changing your heart rate to adjust for certain things, and your lungs are constantly adjusting like the oxygen parameters, and all these incredible things that you don't even think about that your body's doing. And I just found that really, really interesting. And I wanted to do more of that. And that to me was medicine. And so that's what basically drew me towards medicine.
Awesome. Cool. Sorry to interrupt your flow, your story flow
right
there. Yeah.
And so, that's what drew me towards medicine. And I got this offer from Dent and Med. And I was like, I haven't really ever thought about Dent, but I knew it was a year shorter. And that sort of drew me a bit. But I'd never really been too interested in dentistry. And so I definitely was more leaning towards medicine. So I picked it, and that was it really. And I was waiting for second year to start. So that was my journey. And then I was applying for jobs as well at the halls. Was the other thing I was doing during that break. So I wanted to go back and tutor at Cumbie and then also at the Māori Centre.
Awesome. So what about you, Grace? What is your, so you grind through the year, you go through the ups and downs, and then in December, you're waiting, you're back at home, sunshine, Taranaki, and then you get this offer. What is that like for you?
I remember going home and just being shattered. You kind of come off these exams and have a big party at the end of it, and you've got a week to party, pack up your room and get home. It's a big old grind. I just remember getting home and just being like, wow, this is life. Spending some time in the sunshine and the surf and hanging out with mates. It was awesome. Just refresh the little body clock, I guess. I think Mum and Sam were in the lounge and I was still in bed when offers came out. And I got a message from Sam on Facebook pop up on my phone, and it said offers are out, and I was like, oh no. I was feeling pretty good. Like my grades were pretty good, and I was like, I should get an offer, but there's still that little thought in the back of your mind, like, what if this year the grades are high, or what if I cooked a subject, or what if yada yada, and I remember opening my phone and going onto the website, and because I don't know, I was just like in my bed and I was like, oh, I should check it now. And so opened it up and I got offers from Med and Dent as well. And then I soldiered downstairs and sat with Mum and Sam, and we had puppies at the time, I think. So it was an exciting, busy time of life. I was pretty stoked. I was never really into dentistry, so that was a pretty easy decision for me.
Awesome. And what did your family think? Your father? I mean, it made, both siblings getting into med school. That's a pretty awesome piece of news to get, and have puppies as well at the same time.
They were pretty stoked, but our parents have always been of the mindset, like, do what makes you happy.
Awesome.
And so while they were obviously very happy for us, it wasn't so much about like the medicine has this sort of stigma of like prestige, and it's an incredible career, and like it is a cool career, and you get to deal with a lot of these incredibly intimate and stressful parts of people's lives, but it's also like a huge sacrifice in terms of work-life balance and your own free time in a sense, and I think they knew that that's what we wanted to do, and they were like, we're happy for you in that regard, and they were stoked, more than happy. But I think if we'd gone into anything else, they would have been just as happy, and it wasn't so much about what we'd picked as such as that we'd got to what we wanted to do.
And I think that's really important, because a lot of people think that the parents have this expectation, whereas actually parents don't actually mind. They just want you to be happy and successful. I think, Tana, you mentioned that as well, where your parents are quite supportive, that, hey, it doesn't actually matter. The fact that you're happy and successful in what you want to do is the main thing. And I think happiness is pretty important, because at the end of the day, if you're not happy and you're doing X, Y, Z, then your parents are not going to be happy as well. So now you're in med school. Let's talk about med school. We won't go through every single year. We'll just talk about med school generally. So who wants to take that away? So you get this offer, you're now in med school, and then boom. We start with going to seeing cadavers. What is that like?
So that was pretty interesting. I think that's the first thing you do in med school. I think that's so like you have like flatting O week, or flow week, which is a week before all the freshers get down. So you're moving to flats and like no class that week, and then you have O week, and medicine starts in that week.
Yeah.
So I think it might be the only course that starts a week before everyone else, which is a bit of a stitch up, because you've still got all these like huge gigs and like all of Castle Street's going off, and you've got 8 a.m. lectures, and then you've got I think it's the Waka Otago, which is the blessing ceremony for the bodies, and I think it's like midweek from memory. It's like a Wednesday or Thursday after one of the big Castle Street parties, and it's early. It's not super early. It's about 9 a.m. but it's early for a Castle Street, and so everyone was really nervous the day before, so none of us really went out that much, just because none of us had really ever seen dead bodies before, and it's sort of like, it's a respect thing as well. You don't want to be the guy that's hungover at the ceremony, and it's quite an intimate ceremony. It's not something you realize until you've done it, and I don't think it's compulsory. I'm not sure, but I definitely recommend going for everyone that does go to get into medicine. I think it's really important, and it puts you at ease a bit before you do incisions on the bodies and basically take them to pieces, and it gives you that sense of sort of belonging, and that this is what these people donated their bodies to, and it just puts you a bit more at ease with the situation, because it's not really a natural thing as a 19-year-old or any age really to be cutting into this body who you don't know anything about, but it's still very human. Like it's cold and it's been put in formaldehyde to preserve it, but it's still very human. It's a bit confronting because like it could almost be your grandparent or someone's grandparent, and it's still relatable to that point. And so I think having that Waka and the ceremony to start off with was really good, just because you're not doing anything procedure on that day, and you're just basically seeing the bodies. And people have all kinds of different reactions to it. And once again, like it's all about just non-judgmental. Some people will faint, some people will cry, but it's all part of it. And I think to try and like blunt those emotions or hide them is sort of cheating yourself, and you're basically just setting yourself up for a bigger reaction later on when you see stuff in hospitals and things go wrong. And I think it's just part of being real and just taking it all in.
Yeah, awesome. And that's a pretty I guess a pretty unique experience that you both have been privileged to experience, which is basically the start of your journey. And I mean, that was, if you think about it, health science first is not actually med school. That is your entry into, that is your med school. And if you think back, that was your first acknowledgement that you're now embarking on this journey. And now 5 years later, you're almost at the end of this journey, which is pretty crazy. Grace, what's it been like for you over the last, I guess, what's med school been like for you?
I've loved med school. Absolutely loved it. I had so much hesitancy going into second year after such a tough year. First year, I was like, is uni for me? Is this course for me? I can't do another year like I did last year. And I kind of went into it really nervous, but I picked up a lot of sport again. I was out socializing. I was having fun. And like, it's incredible just doing that. Like my grades were just, I hardly worked for them, and they were just so much better. And like, it was just bliss because you're like finding yourself again. And I did a lot of like kind of soul searching, I guess you'd call it, after that first year, and figuring out the key to what makes me happy. And then getting into med, like ever since then, it's just been bliss. There's definitely a few tests of your knowledge and a few tests of character along the way, especially in that fourth and fifth year when you're in a hospital and you've got these consultants and people of kind of power, I guess, kind of bossing you around, and you get the curtain shut across your face in a patient's room. But it's all about learning, and you kind of learn to just take it on the shoulders, and kind of bit of banter there with the consultants, or just reading the room a bit. But I've loved it. It's been such a privileged opportunity. Like, it is such a privilege to be part of med school and have this opportunity to be so intimate with these like crazy parts of people's lives that you'd never, like, especially as a first year house science student in med. I'm 23, and I feel like how lucky am I to be dealing with these parts of people's lives that the people closest to them don't even know about. And so it's just about kind of taking like a bit of money and time to address that. So I've loved it, and like, it's exactly what I feel like I'm meant to do. And
that's really awesome, because like you said just before, you were questioning yourself whether or not this is the right thing. And it's okay to do that. It's okay to stop and go, actually, is this the right thing for me at this particular point in time? Because lots of us go through a question phase when you think, hey, I'm an imposter. I shouldn't be here because of whatever reason. But when you go down to, like I said, you do a bit of soul searching, you actually, wait a minute, this is all good. And then you start enjoying it. I think both of you have mentioned quite a bit that balance is important, playing sport, getting involved. It's not just about hitting the books. And I think, Tane, this is something you've also tried to mention as well, that you need to bring that more into your life, because like it's right at the start, Grace, it balances everything in life, and this is something that I also try and do in my life. Try being the key word. Yeah. And then you both went to Wellington. You did some stuff in Wellington. So you bounced around, like I said, you went to Taranaki, to Dunedin, then up to Wellington, which again would have been a bit of a change for you, coming from a smaller place to a bigger city. What is that like for you? Because the other thing is, you have got all these networks that you've created while you're in Dunedin. And I guess within your mid school, you become pretty close, and then you move to a whole new space with these peers of yours. What is that like for you when you say goodbye to Dunedin?
It's hard. So you have to do your first 3 years in Dunedin, and then the class basically splits into thirds, and it's like with our year, like half of my mates were much going to Christchurch or Otago, and then half of them were going to Pōneke or Wellington. And I was like, oh, I don't know where to go. Christchurch was cheaper rent. It was still down the South Island. The weather was arguably better. It was colder, but there was no horizontal rain there. And then Wellington, rent was really expensive. I probably had a few more mates going up. I was close to my whānau. I could drive home in the weekends, kind of thing. And that was probably the biggest pull factor for Wellington, because I had mates in both cities, but one I had to fly home and one I could drive home. And so that's basically what pushed me towards Wellington. But it was pretty 50-50. And I think for anyone that goes through second or third year, like, I think you should choose it based on your non-medical factors more than anything else. Like, I think you've always throughout your medical career going to have the options to move for medicine, but it's not often you get the chance to move for whānau or for friends or for whatever else, sport, art, culture, whatever it is. And so I think whatever you choose is, if you can choose it based on your extracurricular activities, is what I'd probably recommend. So we chose Wellington.
Did you both decide together? Was it a joint decision, or was it an independent decision and you came together?
It was definitely a factor, I think, of both of our decisions on where the other one was going. I was like going to Christchurch, and then I was like, oh no, I'll go to Wellington, because Grace is going to Wellington. And I was like, oh, Grace definitely locked in on Wellington. Mum and Dad, and most of my whānau is all in the North Island.
Yeah.
And squash was probably better, which is my main sport, is better in Wellington. So I kind of was like, oh yeah, I'll go to Wellington. I didn't feel strong either way, and I guess because my whānau was closer, I was like, oh yeah, I'll go to Wellington.
Yeah, cool. Whereas Grace, you're like, this is my jam. Wellington is where I'm going.
Yeah.
From Sam's indication.
I guess I don't really know why I wasn't so keen on Christchurch. We came for a roadie here one weekend, and I was just like, nah, this isn't it.
Yeah.
I think, I actually don't know why, because to be honest, most of my mates were actually coming to Christchurch. But I was told, probably some of the best advice I got about the decision is that, like, don't follow your med mates, because at the end of the day, you're going to do 2 years together and wherever you choose, and then you go, like, we're in Hawke's Bay now, and then next year you're even more spread out. And so, like, you kind of have, like, keep 2 or 3 friends close to your heart, and stick with them, really, like, because you're going to get split up anyway, and at the end of the day, it's always best to, like, find happiness within yourself as opposed to, like, others, I guess, sort of thing. But I was always sold on Wellington just because it was closer to home, and kind of very lucky. I feel like it was very lucky that we ended up in Wellington, given that was the year that the lockdowns happened, and we just jumped in a car, went home and spent it with the family, and that would have been a very long 10 weeks or whatever it was in a cold Christchurch flat. When we were at home with the animals and mum and dad and a warm fire and
yeah,
a surfboard.
Totally. and I guess, we could keep on talking. I mean, we can go on and on, about all the different things you've had to go through. And I guess we'll talk about lockdown very quickly. What is that like for you? Because I mean, lockdown affected everybody differently. So you're in your clinical years now, I guess, and you get locked down. What is that like for you emotionally? So you have this, we all hype up everyone. This is normal. We have hype up so we can get into, and then the hype disappears. What is that like for you? Dissipates, I guess.
Personally, I loved lockdown. That
Yeah.
first little lockdown, that one, the level 4.
The first one, yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Emotionally, it was time for me to kind of because we spent it kind of around a beach. Like, we didn't swim because it was level 4 and all the rest. But for me, it was a massive time just to reconnect, spend some time doing fitness and stretching and whatever else you're kind of into. And I think it was really interesting. I've recently been listening to this podcast about how to not create happiness, but the things that make you happy or whatever. And a lot of it's just about your perception and your kind of changing the way you think about things. And so I guess I looked at lockdown, you can look at it as a huge missed opportunity to all the clinical practice we missed out on. But for me, I was just this is a massive time for me to think about what's important to me, time to get fit, get fitter, spend a lot of time with family and pets, that was another summer break, being able to hang out with mum and dad and my cat, who's my OG mate, spends a lot of time hanging out with my cat, and then the dog, it was just awesome time to actually really value with family, I think, for me.
And that's awesome. I think, when we talk about the lockdowns, a lot of people have a negative perception about the lockdown, but if you reframe it and you find the positives, you actually go in with the positives actually outweigh the negatives for a lot. And this is a very general statement, obviously. But I found, when I think about it, it's the lockdown is the only time in your life where you just have to, we all have to stop.
Yeah.
Everyone have to stop at the same time. And then you start thinking, all right, cool. What do I actually really want to do? What's enjoyable? You've got 12 weeks to just reconnect. And I don't think that's ever going to happen again in our lives. I mean, hopefully, I don't know, who knows? But it's pretty unique to have that experience. What about you, Sam? So Grace is obviously getting her gains, getting fitter, reconnecting.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we were really lucky. We could drive home. Our whānau didn't have any financial stress as such. So we were really lucky in that regard. And initially, mum and dad wouldn't let us come home. So because we'd been in Wellington Hospital, and Wellington had a few cases, they were like, oh no, you go and stay at this place out at Owakota, which is about 15 minutes outside of, New Plymouth rather. So we stayed out there, pretty close to Owakota Beach. So me and Grace, the first couple of days, we were like, oh, this is sweet. We had Zoom lectures, we had camera off, I'm off sort of thing. And just cruise. And after that, we got really bored and we were like, oh, we've got to make some sort of routine out of this. And so we set our alarms and we were like, all right, we're going to go for a walk in the morning. And we went down to the end of the sort of the beach. And then we'd come back and we'd stretch and we'd have to make a different breakfast every morning. And we just made little challenges and stuff like that. And then after 2 weeks, if none of us had symptoms, we were allowed to go and join mum and dad back in town. So yeah, we made a little routine sort of thing of just different challenges each day, and we did find a different Instagram or some sort of workout challenge or something to try and achieve. Yeah, but it was fun. It was just challenges you didn't normally do, just stuff that you would normally do. And normally I'm just a fiend for making the same breakfast and same thing. I just get in a routine, I just stick to it. So it was quite nice to just be oh, I'm going to do something different. I've got to challenge myself with this or that. And yeah, I think a lot of med school didn't know too much about how to deal. You can't really replace clinical placement with Zoom. And so a lot of the lectures we were getting, we sort of had before in second and third year. And a lot of us were oh, we'll sort of chuck the camera off, chuck the Zoom off, and we'll go and do something else kind of thing. And so we were really lucky. Yeah, that was a bit of a drain.
Awesome.
And then got to spend a lot of time with whānau.
Awesome. And now you're both in your 6th year. What is that like for you? For you both? Is that and also knowing that in a couple of months' time you'll be finished.
Yeah, it's
Finish
surreal,
the first stage of your learning, I guess, because you never stop learning.
Yeah, it's a bit surreal. Because you think back to end of high school, and it feels not that long ago. And then we're about 6 months out from being junior doctors, right about now.
Yeah.
And you sort of think, like, oh, crikey, like, if Johnny comes in and Johnny's got this in ED, like, am I really going to be the one that's going to look after him? Or, and so it's quite surreal. But I think you just like live in the moment and just like, we've sat off a few exams and we did pretty well on them, and you kind of just back the system, I guess, and you're like, well, I've passed all the standards, I've passed all of these, and I've done this and that, and like I've been engaged in my placements, and I've got no reason to believe that I won't be a good doctor. And I guess it's just about backing yourself and not comparing yourself to your peers, but knowing that you're no different to what they are, and you see where the current house officers are, and you're like, I'd probably make a similar decision, or I'd agree with that, or kind of thing. But it's pretty surreal that you're going to be a doctor in 6 months.
That's very cool. How are you feeling, Grace?
I remember like a very distinct memory being at Pint Night as a first year, back when it was Refuel, I think it was, before it's whatever it's called now. And I was talking to some mate there, and she was like, oh, I'm fourth year medicine, and I was like, you're so old, what are you doing, how are you still at Pint Night? And here I am as a sixth year, and I'm like, I'm gonna go to Pint Night next week, baby, we're on. But like I can't believe it's gone so quickly. And like I'm exactly the same as Sam. I look at it was actually quite lucky. I had a fourth year the other day on my team in Hastings, and I remember we started the round, and I said to him, like, oh, have you done a round before? Have you written a note? Do you know how this works? And he was just like, no. And so it was like, you don't actually take a moment to realize how much you've learned in the 2 years in a hospital, because often it doesn't feel like you're learning a lot. Feels like sometimes your clinical knowledge of physiology and all the rest is going backwards. But I think it's a really important time, because you learn what's important to know. You learn, oh, you don't need to know this exact cell or exact like chemical formulation. You need to know that like this is this, and when they're in that, we give them this. And it's about really like that fine tuning of your knowledge. And I feel like it's easy to get into a bit of a kind of looking at yourself and thinking, oh, I'm not good enough, I'm not going to get there. You just got to take a deep breath and kind of look at those around you, and you're all similar, you're all getting good marks, you're all in the same boat, you're all there to support each other, and there's so many people that are going to look after you when you get there. And like, you trust the process. You've been through 6 years and you've done well, and you're keeping up with your colleagues, and there's no reason that you wouldn't be fine. You just got to kind of take it one day at a time and just do your best, and everything will figure itself out.
And that's so true, Grace. It goes right back to what we said at with Tane's, gratitude thing. I think a lot of us, this is just humane to us to live in a negative frame. We think about the negative stuff that happens in our life, and we don't just stop and celebrate the small successes. Like you said just before, just that moment when your fourth year was like, I've never done this before. It gave you a moment to actually, wait a minute, I know how to do this. 2 years ago, I was in the same boat, and I've actually gained this. So I think it's important for everybody out there just to celebrate successes, whatever the successes are, because everyone's got some success in their life, even if there's a negative frame around it. Hey Tim, we can keep talking forever, because I really think you guys are awesome legends, but we have to round up soon. Otherwise, we'll lose our listeners. We might have to get you back here again for some other chats. But the way we like to end our podcast or conversation is the topic, or our podcast is called Bastards of Knowledge, and with our guests, we like to ask them to give us, our listeners, some sort of knowledge that they would like to share with our listeners, and I guess with us. So is there any wise words through your experiences that you'd like to share? And it doesn't have to be a study related, it can just be about your experience as you've gone through life over the last 23 years, I guess. Who wants to go first? It's always the hardest question.
That is a hard one. Off the spot as well. I think my one would be to do what you like. It's real cliche, but do what you love. Like follow what your passion is. And if that takes you a while, and it doesn't necessarily have to be uni, it doesn't have to be, take a gap year. I think you should just follow what you enjoy. And I think these days, especially, like, there's a lot of pressure to get into something early. You're wasting your time if you don't. And I think, being here now, and like I've got mates that have gone in through postgrad now, a couple of years older than me, and they're at the same stage medically as where I am. But they've loved it, and they've enjoyed every part of their journey. And I think that's the other part of it is, do what you love and follow your passion, and enjoy the journey as well as the destination. Like I think those are very two cliche things, but they're really true. For I think lots of things in life, but especially medicine and the journey that I've had, I think med school's tough, and it's it can be hard and challenging for multiple, intelligence, time, lots of things. But I think, like you look back on it and you're like, what, those are actually some of the best years I've ever had. And the things outside of medicine that you do. And I think just enjoy the journey, and just the goals you're working towards, and follow what you enjoy, and make time for the things you enjoy and the people that you want to invest in.
Yeah, awesome. So I think you make time for things you enjoy and the people, because that's, those are everything in life happens, but you only have one moment in time, one moment in experience. And if you keep living in the past or the future, you don't actually live in the moment. So yeah, I know it's a cliche saying, but hey, it's a cliche saying because not people do it. People don't do it. It's always said out there, oh, whatever you're talking about. So I think that's a good reminder there, Sam. What about you, Grace? What wise words do you have for us all?
Oh, so this is a big, tough question as well. I feel like there's so many different aspects of that journey that, that's the kind of question that I can answer. 100%, I think Sam's hit the nail on the head there. I look at, I remember being like, oh my goodness, if I don't get into medicine this year, or whatever you want to do, if you don't get into it straight away, there's no stress. Like life is long, like you'll get there eventually, and like you got to follow what you want to do. Like you got to find your passion and chase it. I remember mum and dad always saying to me, like, they'll still love me even if I was doing a checkout for the rest of my life. And I used to be like, what? And now I look at it and I'm like, you know what, like if that's what I wanted to do, if that's what one of my mates wanted to do, I'd be like, that's so cool, you chase that, you be the best checkout person you can be. Like I think it's so important to chase what you love and do what you love. And it doesn't matter if people see you as successful or not, because no matter what you do, if you love it, you'll be good at it and you'll be successful. And I feel like you got to remember that. And then the other thing for me is just like perspective. Over the years, I've learned so much to change my perspective on things, like in first year, I was quite negative, and I wouldn't say negative, I just put a lot of pressure on myself. And even small things, like if people were like, Grace, come out tonight, and then I'd really take that to heart if I was like, no, I'm not coming out. And then I'd be like, what are they thinking about me? Like just changing your perspective on everything and thinking like you got to do what makes you happy, and like you're the most important self. And if you can be happy on your own, then you can be happy with anyone, anywhere. Like just trying to find yourself and find what makes you happy is really, really important. And just going through that journey, I guess, is really something that's worthwhile and something worth pouring a lot of time into.
And that's really quite profound, because I think it ties back to what you've said there. Happiness and perspective go hand in hand. If your perspective is based on, well, I heard this one thing the other day, whereas whatever your beliefs have, you will feed your beliefs with whatever you think is right. So for example, like you said, Grace, you said when you didn't go out, your beliefs were fed by the fact that you thought that people were thinking bad about you. But if you flip the script and go, hey, this is what I believe in, and you find the positiveness, and all right, cool, this is what I really want to do. So perspective and happiness really go hand in hand. And I think that's a very, very profound saying there that both of you have shared and can tie in really well together. Tana, anything that you'd like to add to round this up?
No, it's just good to hear the different sides of the story. It's always good to hear different people's stories, where they've got to and how they've got there, because I think that's where the importance comes from. That's the cliche saying, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey, and that's what we like to see on the podcast.
Yeah, and I mean, both of you, I mean, it's pretty awesome because you've both ended up in the same sort of destination, but your journey has been different in the way you've got there. From one person that, hey, I love science, it's what I should do, to the other that's, oh, I love arguing, should be a lawyer. And now you're both in your 60th med school, so, and you've enjoyed the journey along the way. You've played squash, you've had ups and downs, you've had mental challenges, you've had life challenges, you've had a pandemic chucked in there, you've had puppies, you've had things happen, but like you've mentioned it, the key thing I've noticed is through the whole thing is you've spoken about the journey and you've experienced all those moments there. So yeah, so that's really fantastic. I think that's a great place for us to end our podcast today. So thank you, Grace and Sam, for jumping on today. I really appreciate you. I'm going to say this again. I think you're both awesome human beings, and I'm very lucky to have met you in my life. And I look forward to seeing how you both graduate into the year, and hopefully I can come and celebrate that with you. So thank you both for jumping on.
Thanks for having
Thanks
us.
for having us. Yeah, thanks to Tana and Rajesh for having us. And yeah, thanks so much. It's been awesome.
Awesome. And to our listeners out there, thank you very much for listening. As always, feel free to share, comment, like, subscribe to our podcast. I mean, this podcast only happens because we think you find great content in it. And as always, like we say, use the next few weeks, the next few days to find some ways to fill up your basket of knowledge. Thanks, everyone. Bye.